Welcome, indie game adventurers, to the Indie Game Lunch Hour, the best dang indie gaming podcast on the planet.
Today we're being joined by...
Hold on. Sorry.
The Indie Game Lunch Hour.
I'm too used to doing it on my own. Kath, cut that part out. Those who are here live, you got a little false start. My bad. I forgot you had to say something, Tim. Let's do it again.
No, it's fine.
All right, here we go.
So, today we're being joined by Christy
Wait.
Ecker.
I'm gonna still start from the beginning, so it's one flow.
We'll start from the top.
My bad, Tim. All right, start from the top. Welcome, indie.
Sorry.
That's okay. Welcome, indie game adventurers, to the Indie Game Lunch Hour, the best dang indie gaming podcast on the planet.
Today we're being joined by Christy Ecker, Abram Buck, and Adam Russell from Future Suit Games, and also some of IGA's Foundry founders. And we're going to be talking about iterating towards an incredible game.
Yay. We have to do it a third time.
The Game Lunch Hour.
Thank you, soundboard. The soundboard has this fun habit of jumping off of stage. One more time. Third time's the charm. Sorry, everybody. This is the first time Tim and I are doing an interview together. Okay, this is it. Welcome, indie game adventurers, to the Indie Game Lunch Hour, the best dang indie gaming podcast on the planet.
Today we're being joined by Christy Eckert, Abram Buck, and Adam Russell from Future Suit Games, and also some of IGA's Foundry founders, and we're going to be talking about iterating towards an incredible game.
The Indie Game Lunch Hour.
Y'all, that was our third take, so very pertinent to the topic of today, iteration. In our live magical podcast, we give game developers the chance to hear real stories of indie development from real indie founders, as well as directly ask them questions about their areas of expertise in the second half of each episode.
This is an unedited recording of a weekly event we host in the Indie Game Academy Discord on Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, so feel free to swing by for the next one and ask your questions live. There are links to join down below.
We're your hosts, Willem Delventhal, headmaster of IGA and the Wizard of Games.
And I'm Tim Wood, founder of Right Finder Headhunting and the Knight of Games Recruitment. And joining us today is Christy Ecker, Abram Buck, Adam Russell from Future Suit Games, and also some of IGA's Foundry founders. And we're going to be talking about iterating towards an incredible game.
Wow. So, Christy, Abram, Adam, what are you having for lunch here today?
Well, it's really dreary outside, so after the podcast, I think I'm gonna make myself some comfort food, and that, for me, would be homemade macaroni and cheese.
Nice.
Solid choice.
I'm having a pumpkin spice flavored protein shake. I'm trying to do this thing where I have like a liquid lunch.
Okay.
For me, just water with some electrolytes.
Got like smaller and smaller there. A little bit of iteration. Nice. Well, welcome to the show, everybody. It is a pleasure to have you on. So, Christy, Abram, and Adam are three of the three founders at Future Suit Games, and one of our three Foundry teams for the Indie Game Foundry program, our sort of experimental publishing arm that we started running last year. And it is a pleasure to have you guys on. We're here to talk about iteration and game development and a little bit about your experiences founding a brand new indie studio during this hectic time in games and now building out and getting your game ready for Kickstarter come October. So before we get to that, as always, we like to ask that origin story question. So, team, tell us where you are today in games and how you got there.
Which of us wants to start?
I guess I can start.
okay.
I started out like over a decade ago making games, trying to work with game engines like Game Maker and RPG Maker, but they didn't really click with me. So the first 3 to 5 years of my game development journey was just creating like card games like that you play. I was always a fan of like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering. And I was like, you know what? I don't know how to code, but I'm just going to make games with card games. So I did that for like 3, 5 years, I actually had a Kickstarter for my game Kings of Dust. It failed horribly, but it was like in that moment it unlocked something in me. It was like I was no longer afraid to fail. Like before, I was so afraid to do projects because I was like, "What if I fail?" But that failure like really kickstarted my like creative journey, and I'm really appreciative of that. But then I found IGA through a YouTube video. This awesome dude was doing a paper prototyping video. It was Willem, and for 6 months or so, I just listened to the podcast, and then I heard Gwen talk about her journey with level three, and I was like, "What is level three?" And I went to one of the level three graduations, and then eventually I just signed up for level three, and that's where I met Christy, Adam, and Abram. I mean, Christy and Adam. Uh,
That's where you really got to know yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And then yeah, then that's how we got this far together. And I'll pass it over to one of them because that's a good summary of how I got here.
Beautiful.
I could go next. So basically, I had a really eclectic path, to eventually finding my way to games. Started out, for 10 years, about 10 years, in animal welfare. I worked as a dog groomer and a dog walker. Then I went back to school and I pursued a lifelong passion of mine, writing. Then I had a really successful career in journalism for a while, but it just still wasn't satiating who I was inside. And so I decided to pursue one of my other passions, which is gaming. And I wanted really, really to mesh the two. I wanted to mesh, writing and games. So after a little bit of research and some help from my partner Wilson, I found IGA, and I decided to take the level one class at IGA. And from there, I found myself taking level three. And sort of like the rest is history. I signed up for level three, and that's where I met Abram and Adam.
Mm.
Hey, Christy.
And Christy.
Oh, and Christy. Yes, yes. I really got to know myself as well. It's true.
Yeah. So for me, first experience, I grew up playing games, mostly like video games and stuff. Then that's what kind of got me to learn programming. I would think it was Corona SDK was the framework I was using. It was super easy to start making stuff with, and that kind of got me into coding and then becoming a software engineer actually from there. And I didn't really make many games from there, but I still always wanted to. So uh, after my life got a little more stable, I started looking at like how to like taking more classes online, and like Abram and Christie, I stumbled upon IGA. I think I kind of lurked in one of your free courses. Didn't have camera on, didn't say anything, but everyone seemed like really nice in the class. And then I think they were all strangers, so it just seemed like a really good vibe. So I signed up for the level three, and I met these two, and I did learn a little bit about myself too during that. So that's it.
Nice. Awesome. Tim, do you have any follow-up from that?
Yeah, so obviously you all met each other and perhaps yourselves throughout that kind of process. So can you tell us a little bit about how Future Suit itself coalesced? Like, where did the name come from, and where did your initial kind of ideas for your game that's in development right now come from as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Abram.
Oh, I was going to speak to the name because that is one thing that I thought was an interesting journey. For the longest time, I don't remember what we called ourselves before that, but we were calling
Boom.
ourselves something. But Kaboom, that's right.
Boom.
We were calling ourselves Kaboom, and we pitched around some other names. And Future Suit was something that Adam actually came up with, and for some reason, like I guess I was like, I don't know about Future Suit just because I didn't understand. Like, I was like, a suit. And then we started just talking about it, and we were like, a future suit, it doesn't have to be like literal. When we were talking about like it could be like the future suit, like people wear skin suits and you call that a suit. And it's like, what if a future suit is like a robot dude? Like you're an android or something. So then after we started talking about that, it like got more interesting to me because I guess in my mind I wanted something that looked cool. Like I was like, whatever the logo is, it's got to look cool. So after we got that down, I was like, we were all on board, and we were like, we all went forward. It felt right too. It's weird, super weird, because Kaboom at the time was like, I can't see anything other than that. But then after we started talking about and iterating on the names and future what Future Suit could mean, it just like it felt right.
I
Yeah.
think if I'm right, during one of our calls, we were talking about the name Kaboom, and I encouraged you guys to change the name because it
Yeah.
felt like Kaboom was something. One of the things we do in Foundry is we're trying to set you up with a company that we think could survive long term and launch more games in the future and be recognizable and memorable. And Kaboom is not bad, but it felt to me a little too generic and like not quite opinionated enough. And then when you hit us with Future Suit, I was like, ooh, yeah. I would totally follow a Future Suit game.
Yeah. That happened, like, over the
Yeah.
span of, like, 2 hours. It was, like, a 2-hour, like, intensive brainstorming session that we, sort of, like, embarked upon, and then as it piggybacking off of Abram, in regard to the word "suit," it's also a little bit of tip of the hat to us and our journey because we started out in level 3 making a card game. It was a deck builder, and then now we are also making a card game, so just like, it can be perceived as like an actual suit, like a suit for a robot, it can also be perceived sort of like figuratively like a suit of cards.
Mm. Wait, I didn't
So
even get that.
yeah, it's like a double meaning, and a little bit of a tip of the hat to sort of like where we came from
I love that.
and where we might
Yeah.
go in the future or other paths we might take.
Okay, so I pitch us. So the game. The game is I say this hoping we don't have anybody in the audience from the other two Foundry teams. I've said this a couple of times sort of behind closed doors, but of the 3 games out of Foundry, we're talking about me as a player, not as your not as your supporter, not as a publisher or whatever. This is the game that I expect to lose myself in. I love deck builders. I love deep narrative. I love branching choices. So give us a pitch. Let's get the audience excited. What is Daughter of the Rift?
It's a story-rich sci-fi card battling epic. You're gonna
More.
embark on this journey, of, of heart, of heroism, that is full of twists and turns, but at the same time, you're going to be engaging with really, really, rich mechanics that will have you thinking. You have to think in order to get yourself out of some really hairy situations with some, pretty tough enemies. You're going to be inside a world that is really fleshed out. If players that want to are going to be able to dig into the lore, they're going to be able to, learn about and explore the planets that make up the Zerian star system. We have really, really invested our hearts and our souls in creating this game, in crafting this experience, because we not only do we love it, but we want others to love it as well. So we want everybody. We can't wait for everybody to meet Grecian, and we can't wait for everybody to really engage with these mechanics, these really interesting mechanics that we've created, and yeah, inside a world of really rich art, and yeah, just excited for everybody to experience it.
Yeah.
Heck yes. I'm gonna
I would.
shamelessly plug it. I'm gonna shamelessly plug it for 1 second, Abram. For all those who are here, we would love, even if you weren't to back the campaign, although you should consider doing that too, if you would at least follow the Kickstarter. There's links that we just put in the chat. That would be incredibly helpful to Future Suit. All right, Abram, forgive me for cutting you off. Tell us what you
No,
got.
it's fine. I was still thinking. But I was gonna say it's funny because me and Christy and Adam, I think we all describe it differently just based on our own likes. But I would describe it as like you are a former blade of the ZSC, which is like a military force, and you went rogue because you're looking for your long lost love.
Mhm.
All the while you're battling these forces, these unknown forces coming from the other side of this rift. So it's like not only are you looking for your love, but you're also trying to find out and protect the people along your journey from these unknown forces coming through the rift that people just call rift walkers.
That sounds dope. So I'm not too familiar with card battlers myself, but obviously narrative is a really strong part of this game. So like how's that interspliced? Is it kind of set up where you're in like a Magic the Gathering esque kind of card battle, and then you have cutscenes or click through dialogues? Like, how does the overall structure work, and how did you approach that from a design perspective?
Yeah, I can definitely. Oh, Adam, did you wanna?
Oh, I mean, sure. So it's really we approached a really simple structure of just dialogue. You read through it, and then when that's done, you get put into the card battling, the combat, and then you get upgrades later, which you can upgrade outside of combat in the narrative. So it's just a very simple like back and forth. We tried to keep it simple. So
If people have played the FTL, Inscription, Slay the Spire, it's sort of an even more simplified version of the pathing tree that you get when you're traversing. I am not as familiar with these guys, but I've played the game all through its development, and so what it is. It's split up between planet exploration and then individual missions that you find on the planet. You get into a mission, it's similar to a tree and Slay the Spire, but it's one string. So you have some dialogue and then a fight and then some dialogue. And then when you're on a planet, you're actually driving around and finding stuff to interact with. Am I right about that? Adam
Not driving
smiles.
around
Has it
anymore.
yeah, no,
changed?
I'm just
Oh, damn.
terrible at pitching. No, no, just don't ask Adam to pitch things. So,
Got it. Got
Um,
it.
there are also some choices along the way that the player has the opportunity to make. The way we've crafted them, a lot of them don't have like direct impact to the main or like true path, but they will impact like how you're engaging or interacting with your team members or NPCs. So you're going to get different flavor text.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
Now
It is.
oh, go ahead, Adam.
I was just gonna add on that. I was just say it is largely narrative. It is largely linear because if you think about it, like we were trying to make an impactful story, and if you think about a lot of the games that have impactful stories, they're like largely linear, like Final Fantasy VII or Mass Effect. They have like there's side quests and stuff, but it's a largely linear in nature because we want to hit you with that impactful story.
Yeah.
Mm, amazing. So we said the topic of today would be iteration. And this team I think has oh no. Tim, take it away.
Well, as we know, the topic of the day is iteration, and the game is in a state right now that you have worked towards. But how would you say that's differed from the original proverbial blueprint that you first came up with in that first meeting when you were coming up with the game and the title and mechanics?
yeah, very different.
Yeah.
Because as far as design and combat, I mean, we're still discovering things. So it's still, it was very much a matter of, I think when we went into this, we had an idea of what we wanted, but it wasn't like crystal clear. So it was this concept of like, does this work? Does this work? Does this work? And it's a lot of like, nope, 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 and just trying to get to the next step. It was a lot of iteration. So
Yeah. And sometimes, the things that you think are cool, you have to cut them because they don't work. And I feel like I've felt that a lot in this project, which is awesome because it's like a learning experience. I'm like, it's not the end of the world that something I wanted didn't get in the game.
Mhm. Yeah, we didn't actually cover this earlier in the episode, but for clarity, on this team, everybody's indies, and so therefore everybody wears multiple hats, of course. But in general, Christie's responsible for narrative, Abram is responsible for visuals, and Adam is responsible for the game design. I'd be the most curious, I think, to hear all three of those aspects have been deeply iterated upon. I've seen so many different play tests, both internal and external, and I've seen this game go from a dramatically simpler version of the game to what it is now, which I think has some real luster to it, some real magic to it. I think the one of the aspects that has changed the most fundamentally is actually the card battling. Because Adam, when you very first introduced us to the card battling, it was very simple, and we felt like there perhaps wasn't enough complexity to it to compel a typical deck building audience. And now it's quite an interesting and unique deck builder, something I've never quite seen before. So I'd love to hear uh, maybe how it's changed. So give us like a quick like here's where it started and here's where it is now, and then tell us why. Like how did it change? Why did it change? What was your thought process to make those changes?
Yeah, so the initial design for it was one of the initial ideas was like having your cards be resources for to play other cards. So you'd be playing multiple hands that kind of perform an action. Um, and initially it was like picture suits. I need like three diamonds and and a club to play this one card. Um, but to get those recipes and stuff, it felt like I needed a list. And so a lot of the decisions felt like you were looking at a checklist of things like, can I do that? Nope. Can I do that? Nope. Can I do that? Nope. And then, okay, I can't do anything. And so it felt like the player didn't have a lot of choice or an area to kind of be flexible and experiment. So it was really kind of like trying to find something where they allows the player to do that. Um, which is also interesting. Some of the iterations, I still introduce some of that stuff back where like it's some of that stuff still creeps in where reducing player choice. And so it's always for me like this fight of like, no, keep the player giving let the player have more choice. But today it's more about you still play the cards in sets, but now you'll get like bonuses for like how you play them. They'll be on the sides of the cards. There'll be extra things you get by playing these cards together. So yeah,
And
And I think oh,
no, no, you go, Christy.
I was just gonna say, like, to add to that a little bit, I think, in our brainstorming sessions, it always was like, I think, really important to us to connect the card play to the characters themselves, since the characters are so integral to the game, and because this game is so narrative heavy, and so there was a lot of talk and a lot of iteration around how Adam could, how we could as a team craft the card mechanics to make it feel like you're actually playing as these players and you're not just playing a set of cards. And one of the things that we did to do that, one of the things that we did to accomplish that or try to accomplish that is that we actually added in these power-ups or abilities that you're charging with the cards as you play, and the cards themselves are color coded to the characters. So you'll eventually, when that bar fills up, you'll be able to use that ability as that character and see that effect. To I guess further yeah, to just further tie in that, these you're playing as this player. These cards are not distinct from them. They are them.
Yeah. And kind of throughout the entirety of your development, but even just pulling together future suit games, iteration is often born out of the face of adversity. So, what are some of the biggest bottlenecks that you've encountered, and how did you overcome those specifically? Whether it was, going on Kickstarter and figuring out that process, or if it was something quite granular with regard to the actual game itself. What are the things that you'll probably look back on and think, thank goodness we cracked that.
Um, For me, like, marketing has been a really big challenge, and I've had to iterate a lot, like, I guess this is, like, an external part of development, right? And I've had to iterate a lot in the marketing aspect because that's not something that I'm well versed in, but it's something that, like, I embraced, as an indie dev. There's this and one of the ways and one of the ways that I sort of, like, hit a bottleneck, I guess early on I had this strategy where I was making like short little videos that sort of pertained to game dev lessons and how they relate to life, or funny videos how like indie devs like wear many hats. And I got some traction for those videos early on, but I noticed like as I was doing more of them, I really wasn't seeing. I was actually seeing the traction taper off. So I actually had to rethink and sort of shift my strategy. So I actually went to an area where I could leverage my expertise and also leverage an existing network that I had built on LinkedIn. So I'm a writer and I love to write. So I was like, let me try to like bolster my own brand this way, and then sort of like tie it to future suit. So I started writing about, lessons that I was taking away from the game or experiences that I've had just like as a narrative designer in general, and then kind of like tying future suit into the conversation, with the hopes of directing more people to our professional page and just giving the game and us, as devs, more visibility. And I've seen a lot more growth with that strategy, and also bringing on another marketing person who has way more experience than me has helped. Margaret, they have been great in sort of picking up the slack in the areas where maybe I'm a little bit lackluster, but where I can still kind of like drive home that sort of like brand bolstering strategy, that was really working for me, or is really working for me and for the game. So that was probably like the one of the biggest lessons that I've taken away, and also the biggest, I guess, bottlenecks that I personally hit, just because it was such a big learning curve for me.
It's interesting that iteration is the topic of today here, and absolutely, I like to make jokes that my gods are the gods of iteration. Everything I do, it comes in many starts shit and gets better. And I'm okay with that. I love using the quote from my mom, who was a theater director, that done is beautiful. Just get the damn thing done, and then you can go from there. And it's interesting that the first way that we've really talked about iteration here is marketing. Because if you're a typical game developer or a junior, or you're just getting started, or you're a new indie founder, you probably, when you hear the word iteration, are thinking of like, I make game, I show game to player, player hate game, I make game better. That's the typical use case of iteration. But here you are talking about iteration in marketing. And I think that that's actually a wonderful little insight for everybody who's listening, because it truly does plug into every aspect of your lives and every aspect of game development. So I'd be curious, from all three of you, what are some of the ways that you've incorporated iteration into this process of founding, building a game, and now bringing it to Kickstarter next month? And then the tag-on question that I'm actually most curious about is, what are the signs that iteration is needed? How do you know?
For me, I guess one sign, I answer the sign thing 'cause that's the first thing came to mind. One sign iteration is needed is, I guess, from a play test. When you play test it, and then you can notice like something, like the players keep getting stuck somewhere, or uh, they don't understand something. But from an art perspective, I have to iterate a lot during implementation, because
Mhm.
I'll make the art and it's like, you can't. I found out through iteration you can't make it too wide, so now I have to like make sure the characters are within a specific boundary. Um, yeah.
Anything else?
In
Mr. Abbott?
regard to, like, I guess, how we approach iteration as a studio, in regard to the game, or even in regard to just ourselves, I think I could speak to three different things that we do. So I think that we, first and foremost, we take like this multi-layered approach to iteration, whereas sometimes the iteration takes the form of moment to moment, and then other times it can be, and this is something that Adam brought up actually in one of our conversations, it could be more milestone focused. And then
Mm,
lastly, also, iterating on the game doesn't always mean that we're iterating on the game, but that we are iterating sort of like on ourselves. So sometimes, so for example, after level three, we stepped away from each other to sort of like upskill and engage with other devs, have different experiences, work on different game jams. And then for the Foundry, we came back together and unified and created Future Suit, but having already lived all of these experiences and learned all of these lessons that we did not have back when we first were together in level three. So we iterated on ourselves, sort of to ready ourselves for this larger endeavor. And then circling back to like iterating like moment to moment. I'll give one example where we were all talking, and we were trying to figure out sort of like what the core path would be for the demo. Um, and we were talking about how we wanted to end the demo. And we decided that we wanted to end it with a boss, and then we started talking about, okay, who do we want this boss to be? And we started going back and forth, and we're like, okay, I think it should be, this distorted rift walker boss that has been sort of like changed and morphed by the rifts, and like really really very like intimidating, this and that. So as we're going moment to moment and talking about what this boss should be, Abram actually is listening, and he starts drawing who he thinks that this boss could be. And at the end of like this moment to moment iteration, Abram is like, so do you think it could be something like this? And we were like, oh my God, yes. So that's sort of like an example of like a moment to moment iteration.
Mm.
And then in regard to like milestones, we are so lucky with the Foundry, because it really provides us structure, and it provides us like goals and deadlines to hit. And so we use these milestone goals as sort of like pillars to reach. So as we're working towards these milestones, we'll say, okay, we want to test X feature or Y plot point when this milestone arrives, and use that sort of like as a grounding to work on that until the milestone comes, so that we can get a good read on it from the play testers.
Mm. That's interesting. I like that a typical game developer, somebody who's not been creating for too long, will know when I play with a person and they have a problem with something, maybe I need to change it. That's sort of the foundation of iteration in game dev. But I like that you're bringing in some of the other ways that we potentially iterate. Milestone and basically scope management is one of the ones that you'll start running into as you get any kind of professional on your own or with another studio. Because if you're taking game development serious in any kind of capacity, you will be faced with trying to fit too much development into too small of a time frame. We all run into it 100% of the time. We make jokes about publishers not giving us enough time. You don't get enough time as indie devs either. We all face this problem. So I like that, like even running up to alpha when the Foundry program, when I go, hey guys, you need to be feature locked now. That is its own impetus for iteration. You go, okay, well, guess I got to figure out how to do that. And that can actually wind up leading to weaker games sometimes, but a lot of the time that leads to stronger games because you have to figure out how to fit within a constraint or a boundary.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So something I've been kind of rolling around in my head, and maybe one that's more pertinent for some of our listeners who might be completely new to making games, or maybe they've just coalesced their first ever team and they're, taking the first steps on the journey you've already walked together. Um, but how would you actually go about starting that iteration process? Are there different methods that you can use? Is it kind of formal? Is it less formal? Is it ad hoc? Kind of, how's that worked for you? And, what's your general process there?
hmm I will say that I've noticed that us as a team, generally, when sometimes iteration will just come up, like we'll have a team meeting, and then someone will mention something about like the game. They'll be like, "Oh, we should. I think that this could be better," and then that will spark a conversation that we don't necessarily like. We didn't necessarily think, "Let's talk about this thing," but we'll just start talking about it, and then from that, we'll get iterations, which we will either like take notes or someone will just remember and implement it. Um, but that one way we do it is just naturally through conversation. We meet a lot, as I think the more touch points you have, the more that naturally just comes up.
I love iteration as problem solving. Something I like to say sometimes. I have, for whatever reason, worked on more than a couple of tech companies where I'm one of the only game developers or game designers. And one of the things that I try to help, like an engineer who hasn't worked in games yet, understand is game designers and really every field of game development are problem solvers too. We say, somebody realizes that we can't support the number of, I don't know, the poly count on the models that we're building in this world, and now it is the visual artists or 3D modelers problem to solve, or it could be something that somebody else manages to solve too. Um, problem solving together is absolutely a huge part of iteration. Running into an issue, this player didn't understand something. Our game is chugging right now, and the optimization is horrendous. We have 2 weeks to finish this deadline. What are we going to do? All of those problems are something that collectively you'll solve and are wonderful fuel for iteration. Tim,
Yes.
I think you might have something for us.
Yeah,
Yes.
so
I
I know
do.
you've all prepared a little exercise for the community. So why don't we kick that off, and then perhaps we've got some time for some community questions afterwards.
Okay. Abram, I'm gonna need your help.
Okay, actually, I did think of something. It's card game related because we're making a card game. And I remember back when I used to make actual physical card games, one limitation I always had was you have to figure out how many, like the pieces you're going to have in your game before you actually make the game. So that was like a restriction. And I thought it would be cool if you could, like, 'cause this is like the question or activity, right?
Mhm.
It'd be
Yes.
cool if the activity is ideate on a game idea where you can only have 7 cards in your deck. Like, let's say you're working with a printer and they sell these little packs of 7 cards that they put at like stores that people just grab. It's like impulse items, and you can only have 7 cards in there. What kind of game could you make with just 7 cards?
Ooh.
Ooh,
Mm.
I like that.
And where was your? So this is a an exercise for everybody who's in the room. This is something that we're going to try to introduce, or at least we're experimenting with on this podcast. So if you're listening after the fact, what is the kind of game that you can make with just 7 cards? This is a mental exercise, a little bit of just fun for you, and a little bit of practice for you in game development. If you're here with us live, give us some answers in the chat. Tim, I'm curious. What is your initial thought on this one?
I was kind of thinking of a like a rock paper scissors Spock and two friends type
Mm.
thing, where the maybe one card can beat two or three others, and you can kind of have a hand of cards and see how that stacks up against your other opponent's hand.
Ooh.
Maybe each player is limited to 2 cards each, or something to that effect. Um, Obviously, it would require some iteration, but
Hey.
that's where my mind's roughly going with it.
Okay, okay. Anybody here in the room, can you build upon that idea? Any thoughts with Tim's initial kernel? Talking to the Future Suit team, not the chat.
Let's see. Can you
I've
describe it once? Can you describe it once more, Tim?
Yeah, so it's kind of like rock paper scissors, where each
Okay.
card can beat maybe one or two other cards,
Okay.
and maybe it's a two-player game where each player can only have a hand of 2 cards, and you play your hands against each other to see who has the stronger tactical card.
Oh, interesting. I wonder if then there could be some sort of barter technique, like so that,
ooh.
if you trade a card with somebody else, then you can beat that other person sort of thing. Like if you give me this, I'll give you this. So like
Yeah.
leveraging or like debating in some way. I feel like that could be a really interesting mechanic. Like just to engage everybody and then like up the ante a little bit.
Mm.
That's interesting. The Cheru is saying something where the cards are double-sided. So a main mechanic or interaction would have to do with which side you can see or which side you're showing. My initial like thought with what you were saying, Tim, was taking some Pokemon inspiration because you could have different elements, or thematically different than that, but effectively different elements that beat each other or have different effects to each other with a 7 card option set, or maybe with Cheru's idea, a 14 card option set. Sort
Yeah,
of
I
have
really
to.
like Cherry's idea because you're doubling your stuff just with the limitation. I think that's an elegant solution. Um,
Ooh. Alec has a playable idea here. Alec says, new idea, 3 players draw. Not no offense meant to anybody else. 3 players draw and place a random card on their head without seeing it. So we're playing some Indian poker. Based on the other 2 cards they can see, each player guesses their rank, highest, middle, or lowest. If all 3 players make a correct guess, the group wins. Interesting.
Cool.
You'd have
I
to
think
have
I
I
some.
played.
wonder I wonder if you could, like, inject a little bit of, like, role playing into that as well, like, you can create, like, your own hierarchy and then, a set of rules that go along with that hierarchy, and then do
Uh,
through a process of elimination, figure out kind of, like, where you are in the hierarchy, like, whether it be, like, set, in, like, a medieval setting or, in, like, a fairy tale setting, or just something completely made up, like, maybe like, a horror setting, yeah, maybe you're, like, not even human and, like, how is that hierarchy formed? That could be interesting.
that isn't has anybody played, The Great Dalmuti? Does that sound familiar to anyone? It's a really simple numbers game that wound up being a sort of staple in my family. The way that the game actually works, it's a deck of cards, with caricatures on it, but for the most part, it's a sort of standard deck of cards, except that for each number value, there is that many cards. So for the number 12, there are 12 12s in the deck. For the number 11, there are 11 11s in the deck, all the way down to 1. And the lower cards are therefore considered more powerful. And all you actually do is create sets. So if I've got 5 11s, I can place that, and that's very powerful. There's a bunch of other rules that go along with it. But my point here is my family has added an extra rule. There's a sort of metagame that happens where the first player to run out of cards, so the player to win the round, becomes the Great Dalmuti, which is the name of the game and means you are the king or the monarch in the next round. And there is literally taxation. You get to take good cards from the players who did worse. So it winds up creating this social hierarchy where the players that are winning tend to keep winning because they can tax the lower players. And then when there's a big upset, it's so exciting because like suddenly the peon will become the king next round. And it is my family's additional rule is that you have to play act your role. So if you can't just play the game with numbers. If you're the king, you got to act like the king. If you're the peasant, you got to act like the peasant. Your thematic that you just suggested with this a little bit of a hierarchy makes me instantly think of that, Christy. Maybe there's a little bit of role play that we can actually add to this game as well.
Yeah. I
It sounds
like
like
the
a ton of
parody
fun.
also, like, how that sort of, like, reflects sort of elements of society as well. That's actually really cool. Very
I love it's
interesting.
I very rarely run into people who actually know it, so I don't think it did incredibly well, but we adore it in our family. We play it all the time. All right. I think so. Hopefully, that was a little bit of a ooh. An escape mechanics, Petunio. Turn it into an escape room with 7 cards. That would be interesting to figure out. Hopefully, you've seen, audience, a little bit of iteration, even with this simple restriction having 7 cards. And hopefully, you've also seen. I feel like this is a great demonstration of how constraints actually breed creativity. You tend to become more creative when you're given a box to ideate within. When you have a nice open box, it's kind of like, well, I guess I'll make another, narrative medieval game because that's what I like. But when you have a box, you have a restriction, that's when game design actually gets super fun. And that, in my opinion, is also the kernel of iteration and the kernel of great games. What if we made a game where X? That's what winds up building something awesome. So, Adam, your combat in Daughter of the Rift is what if we built a deck building game where we had sets and runs similar to poker straights? And that built our entire system. That's where it all wound up coming from. Now, we have done a little bit of iteration here. We're running out of time, so I'd love to get at least a couple of community questions in. So, Petunio asks from the audience, what is a clear sign that iteration may or may not be working?
I mean, I think that it depends on the player base, right? That you're drawing in. If you're making iterations to, to the script, or to, the art, or to the mechanics of the game, I think if you're not seeing a change in the way that the player base is receiving the game, then you still have more work to do. I feel like that's like the ultimate indication. Um, I can give an example. With myself with working on the narrative. So early on in playtesting, I realized that I was throwing a lot of really world specific proper nouns at the players and they weren't digesting the information. So I realized I was like, wow, okay, so I really need them to understand this information. I have to change the way that I'm delivering it. So instead of kind of like throwing, um, these world specific proper nouns at them in quick succession, I started to break it up into like smaller chunks and spoon feed the player for lack of a better phrase more slowly so that they could have a chance to digest what I'm telling them. And then so that and then when I went and I did that and I iterated upon that, and then we went back and we play tested, I saw a big change. Like suddenly people were understanding like the significance of Anwin. Suddenly people were realizing, okay, Hank is my team member, and now we got to go find Mackers, right? And then it also gave, I feel like it also gave space for players to really start to hear Grecian's voice and also to adhere to Bram, who is really, we created him for like the purpose of the tutorial, but has really become a Future Suit fan favorite. And he does make an appearance again in the game, just because of, I feel like we gave him that room to breathe and develop as a character as well.
That's super fascinating. Okay, I have a personal story that's not going to make any sense for 1 second, but I promise it'll make sense in a hot second. My parents' home is in the middle of the woods, and as a result, we have many bows in the household, like bow and arrow. Um, um, we experimented with modern bows, compound bows, with actual sighting systems on them. And at some point, I decided that I hated that, and I started using medieval longbows. Partly because it's just cool as shit. I mean, that's so much cooler than like a modern bow. If I'm going to use something modern, like I might as well use a different device. But also because I vastly preferred what is called instinctual shooting. With a typical bow, with a compound bow, with a modern bow, you have a sighting system, and the sighting system is like a granular way to measure how you're going to hit the target. So you will sight out the target. You'll say, okay, that's about 50 meters away, and you'll look at the mark on your sight and say, all right, I'm going to aim against the 50-meter mark on my sight, and now I know I'll hit the target. So it's this like very measurable, metric oriented way almost to hit your target. With instinctual shooting and a longbow, you don't have any of those reference points. You can kind of use like I will use my top knuckle to kind of guesstimate where my arrow is going to fall, but you don't have that granularity. You don't have basically that metric oriented way to shoot an arrow. And I think what you're describing a little bit here is the instinctual version, the instinctual shooting version of iteration, where you sit down with a player, and ultimately your player is your gold standard for how your game needs to change. You work with them. You don't necessarily, you're not like tracking 1,000 players and going, okay, well, 73% of them are getting stuck here. Instead, you're saying, it feels like this person is having a problem that I wish they didn't have. And then you're iterating. And once again, it's more about that feel. How do I want this player to experience this game? And then you're playing with another person and going, okay, this feels better. It's more instinctual. It's less metric oriented. Not to say metrics don't help. It can absolutely be wonderful, and you should absolutely bake some metrics into your game. But I think especially early on when you don't have 1,000 players, that instinctual shooting version of iteration, that instinctual gut feeling version of iteration tends to be more common and perhaps more powerful as well. What do you think,
That's really
Tim?
Well, I'm a fan of anyone who shoots bows instinctually. I'm also the same. I can't get on with compounds. I like a
Uh-uh.
stick. I like to point it
Yeah.
vaguely and let an arrow fly.
Genetic
Um,
memory.
so,
5,000 years ago, my ancestors. Sorry.
I don't know. My surname's Wood, so my ancestors probably just, cut down trees and made nice little log cabins, which I quite
Uh,
like the idea of. So another question from the community, from Pecunio again, is could you talk a little bit about the tools that you use for development, and have there been any that you've had to switch? And I'll add, if so, why?
ooh.
Yeah, I will. I guess from an art perspective, I did have to switch a tool. I was going to use Unity for the animation, but then I don't know. I don't really know how to animate in Unity, but I already know how to animate in After Effects. So I just did some research and found a plugin that would allow me to like rig and characters in After Effects, and then just export PNG sequences that I can import into Unity. So that's one thing I had to switch, which I started doing now. Whenever I have a problem, I'll think like, is there a tool I have now, or is there something I can learn quickly? And I'll do some research and then create like a little document to show me how to do it in the future.
Nice.
All right.
Like,
One last question for the day before we start wrapping up. Also from Petunio. Petunio, MVP, we love you. Thank you for being here. For those who are listening, if you'd like to join and ask your own questions live for the next one, join the podcast, join the Discord down below. There's links. Okay. Anyway, Petunio asks, what games influenced your game? What games influenced Daughter of the Rift?
The commercial
Early
answer.
on.
Yeah, I feel
Oh,
like this is not a hard
No, go ahead,
question.
Abram. Go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say the commercial answer is Mass Effect and Slay the Spire, but we actually worked on card game Meteor Down, which is kind of like spirit. Our game is a spiritual successor to that in a way. Um, it's the same thing. I know they're not similar, but they're the same thing. They're in the same like sci-fi kind of theme. What were you gonna say, Christy?
Actually, yeah, no, that's actually a really good point. We are paying a little bit of homage to our roots with this game. So there definitely is that. And then, yeah, and then in regard to like the further inspirations, yeah, Mass Effect, Slay the Spire. I know, believe Guild Wars, was the inspiration for like our narrative setup, for the cutscenes. A little bit of Darkest Dungeon. I know that Adam has been doing a lot of research, into various like card games and card game mechanics, to sort of like inspire him, to further design, how the mechanics in Daughter of the Rift work. For me, um, I think that, uh, this is sort of like, I guess, personal to me, but like a part of the story is inspired by the show Alias. It's one of my favorite shows of all time, and sort of like this, the Grecian, I kind of, was inspired by the main character in that show, Sydney Bristow. She's just a really tough, strong woman, but also she's not afraid to be emotional and be vulnerable. And so I sort of like took that essence and sort of like gifted it to Grecian in a way, putting a little bit of like who I am personally, to her, into her. Um, yeah, it's not a game, but, it's a show that's very close to my heart. Yeah.
That's amazing. These are wonderful references. I love hearing about this. I'm going to ask one last question, even though we're running out of time, is because I promised that I would. Ed on LinkedIn, welcome LinkedIn friends, has asked, all the way from the Netherlands, at least I assume, because they're asking about Dutch. Any plans for localizations or translations for any of your games?
I think if we find out there's interest in those languages, I'm sure we'd be 100%, on board with doing that.
Yeah.
That is the correct answer. So drum up some players, Ed, and we will get you, and we will get you localized. Amazing. All right. I think it is the end of the episode. Tim, is that about right?
I believe it is, Willem.
So I go to the script. All right, that's gonna wrap us up for the day. Before I say goodbye, I'm gonna ping everybody two more times here because I'm really asking here. We're asking for help. Many of you here are game developers. Many of you here are indie developers. If you would follow Daughter of the Rift's Kickstarter, that would be phenomenally valuable to them. Even if you don't back, although we hope you consider backing, because simply of the ever-present, all-important, omnipotent algorithm. If you would please at least follow the Kickstarter, that would be amazing. I've dropped it in the chat. It will also be linked down below if you're listening to this episode later. All right, that is going to wrap us up for the day. Before we go, we like to do two different things here.
Firstly, Future Suit Games, do you have any extra credit that our listeners can do in the next week or so to apply what they may have learned here today?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry,
Go
Abram,
ahead.
go
No,
ahead.
you go. You go.
Oh, okay. So I was just gonna say, to ask them to write a short paragraph, maybe like 3 to 5 sentences describing a game idea that they have. Then show your paragraph, to another person, at least one other person, and have that person give you feedback. And then based upon their feedback, iterate upon your idea in some way.
Fantastic. So, you've heard it here, everyone. Write 3 to 5 sentences of a game idea, show it to at least one other person, get their feedback on it, iterate it, and then if you feel comfortable, post it in the Discord or on LinkedIn. Tag us, tag Future Suit Games, and we can have a look at your thoughts. And who knows, maybe you've got the seed for a great idea.
Yes. Before we go, Future Suit, Abram, Adam, and Christy, anything you'd like to promote here, or any last words of wisdom you'd like to give us?
Yes, we'd like to promote our Kickstarter coming up in October. Uh, you can go to futuresuitgames.com to find out more information. That's just our website. You'll be able to get to other areas from there. And our Discord, please join our Discord.
I did also link the Discord down below. So, Kath, make sure you link both the Discord and the Kickstarter for us. Thank you, Kath. Kath is our editor. Everybody say hi, Kath.
Hi, Kath.
Hi, Cass.
We love
Okay.
you. All right.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Christy, Abram, and Adam, for joining us today. And thank you to everyone who asked questions, Petunio and Ed particularly. And of course, everyone else who is listening today.
If you enjoyed it, there are links to join our Discord down below, as well as for the guest Tim, myself, and anything else we mentioned in the episode.
Next week, we'll be back at 12 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, and there are instructions on how to join our Discord wherever they're put.
They are down below if you aren't already in here. We would love, of course, to have you. And otherwise, I think that is indeed going to do it for this episode. Thank you, Future Suit.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Game over.
Nice.